Here's a thought that probably contradicts everything you've been told about job hunting. The candidates who land the best offers usually aren't the most skilled. They're not the ones with the most impressive resumes. They're the ones who understand a simple truth most applicants completely miss. Hiring is not a logical process. It feels like one. It's dressed up to look like one. There are scorecards, structured interviews, and rubrics designed to keep everything fair. But underneath all of that, hiring is emotional. It's instinctive. It's shaped by biases nobody wants to admit to. And once you understand the psychology running the show behind the scenes, you can position yourself ahead of people who look far more qualified on paper. Let me show you how this actually works. For over a decade, I sat on the other side of the table. I screened thousands of candidates across dozens of industries and watched the same patterns play out over and over again. And here's what I learned. Brilliant people get rejected every single day. Average candidates walk out with offers they probably had no business getting. And the gap between those two groups almost never comes down to raw talent. It comes down to how the interviewer felt about them. After enough years of doing this, I stopped seeing hiring as a skills competition. About 80% of any decision is psychology. The remaining 20% is your actual experience. And once you accept that, you can almost predict who's getting the offer before the interview is even halfway over. So let me walk you through the 6 psychological principles the best candidates use, whether they realize they're using them or not. The first principle is something called cognitive ease, and this one alone will put you ahead of most job seekers. Cognitive ease is a concept from behavioral psychology that basically says this: the human brain prefers things that feel effortless. We gravitate toward information, people, and decisions that don't require mental work to process. And this shows up everywhere in hiring. Hiring managers are not searching for the most impressive candidate. They're quietly looking for the candidate who feels easy to deal with, easy to read, easy to picture in the role, easy to introduce to the rest of the team. That filter starts long before the interview. If your resume is cluttered, if your LinkedIn headline reads like corporate jargon soup, if your application makes the recruiter mentally translate what you actually do, you've already lost ground. Most recruiters spend somewhere between 6 and 8 seconds on a resume before deciding whether to move on. If they have to work to figure out who you are, they simply won't. The same thing happens in the interview itself. When your answers drag on for 3 or 4 minutes without landing anywhere, the interviewer checks out. They might still be nodding. They might still ask follow-up questions, but internally, they've already started writing you off. So the rule here is simple. Don't get defensive. Don't trash your old employers. Don't ramble about every project you've ever touched. Match the interviewer's pace. Mirror their energy and make it easy for them to say yes. Being easy to deal with is one of the most underrated weapons in any job search, and almost nobody talks about it. Once you've made that first impression of being clear, calm, and easy to engage with, something powerful kicks in. The second principle is the halo effect. The halo effect is the psychological tendency to let one positive impression color everything else. If somebody likes one thing about you, their brain quietly assumes they'll like everything else too. It's almost embarrassingly irrational, but it shapes nearly every interview you'll ever sit in. Here's how it plays out. If you communicate clearly, the interviewer assumes you also work clearly. If you carry yourself with confidence, they assume you're competent. If your online presence looks sharp before they even meet you, your perceived value jumps before you've said a single word. And it happens fast. Most hiring managers form an opinion of you within the first 3 minutes. Sometimes they've already made up their mind based on nothing more than your LinkedIn profile and the tone of your application email. This effect is so well documented in research that companies actively try to design around it. And even with structured interview processes, it still slips through. Two candidates with nearly identical skill sets show up. One has cleaned up their professional presence online, posts thoughtful content in their field, and has a clear, focused profile. The other has a profile that looks like an afterthought. Same questions, same experience, completely different treatment from the interviewer. The first one gets the higher offer, the smoother conversation, and the benefit of the doubt on tough questions. That's the halo effect doing the heavy lifting before they ever open their mouth. The lesson is that perception shapes reality long before you get the chance to prove yourself. If you create a strong first impression and carry that energy into the interview, the halo effect starts doing half the work for you. The interviewer literally begins searching for reasons to believe you're the right person for the job, which leads straight into the third principle, likability. Companies love to talk about how their hiring process is fair, structured, and bias-free. And in theory, that's the goal. In reality, every single hiring decision still passes through one undeniable filter. Humans hire humans. People hire people they like. Not the candidate with the cleanest resume, not the one with the fanciest titles, the one they can actually imagine sitting next to for 40 hours a week. And in a job interview, it is far easier to talk yourself out of an opportunity than into one. I cannot count the number of times I sat down with a clearly qualified candidate who spent the first 10 minutes of the conversation complaining about recruiters, complaining about the market, complaining about their last boss. And every single time, the same thought crossed my mind. If you're talking this way about your last manager today, you'll be talking about me the exact same way in 6 months. The interview was effectively over before it began. Compare that to candidates who walked in with even a sliver of warmth, a real laugh, a bit of humor, a small moment of genuine connection. Suddenly, the conversation felt different. Suddenly, I wanted them to do well. Suddenly, I started looking for reasons to push them through to the next round. Likability is not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's not about cracking jokes or being overly friendly. It's about respecting the interviewer's time, matching their energy, and showing them that you're someone who can move work forward without creating unnecessary drama. Skills get you noticed. Likability gets you hired. And until hiring is run entirely by emotionless algorithms, that part is not going to change. The fourth principle is authority bias, and this one is a game changer once you understand it. Authority bias is the tendency to trust, respect, and defer to people who appear to be experts regardless of whether they actually are. You see this everywhere in daily life. A doctor walks into a room and you instinctively listen, even if you've never met them. A police officer gives you an instruction and you follow it without questioning their credentials. We are wired at a very deep level to defer to authority figures. Hiring works the exact same way. Two candidates can have nearly identical experience on paper, but the one who looks and sounds like the expert gets the fast track every single time. The interviewer is not consciously playing favorites. Their brain is just doing what brains do. The good news is you can start projecting authority long before the interview begins. Build a consistent professional presence online. Share useful insights from your field. Comment thoughtfully on industry conversations. None of this requires becoming an influencer. It just requires showing up in a way that signals you know what you're talking about. Once you've planted that seed online, You carry the same energy into the interview through 3 simple behaviors. The first is clarity. When somebody asks a question, don't waffle. Give a clean, confident answer that shows you've thought about this before. The second is structure. Use a clear framework when you talk through experiences, something like situation, action, result. It keeps your answers tight and easy to follow. The third is ownership. Speak in terms of what you specifically delivered, not what the team did, not what the company achieved, what you contributed, and the measurable impact it had. People with real authority don't apologize for their wins. They don't over-explain or hedge every achievement. They state what happened and let the result speak for itself. These small cues compound into something powerful. The interviewer starts treating you like the expert in the room, and that perception transfers directly into the next principle. The fifth principle is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the psychological habit of searching for evidence that supports an opinion you already hold. Once a hiring manager has formed an initial impression of you, their brain quietly starts collecting reasons to confirm that first read was correct. If they've already decided you look like an authority, they'll interpret your answers generously. A small stumble becomes humility. A confident statement becomes leadership. They're rooting for you without even realizing it. But the reverse is equally true and far more dangerous. If they walked in thinking you seemed nervous, unprepared, or unclear, their brain spends the rest of the interview gathering evidence to support that view. Every pause looks like uncertainty. Every detailed answer feels like overcompensation. You're climbing out of a hole that was dug before you even sat down. This is why some interviews feel effortless and others feel like a constant uphill battle. Research consistently suggests that most interviewers make up their mind within the first 60 to 90 seconds. The remaining 45 minutes are mostly their brain rationalizing the decision it already made. To use this principle to your advantage, you have to control the opening. Walk in with steady confidence. Start strong. Reinforce your strengths with specific examples early in the conversation. Pause before answering complex questions so you don't blurt out something half-formed. And gently align every answer with the impression you want them walking away with. Once their mind is leaning your direction, confirmation bias quietly seals the deal. The sixth and final principle is what I call the commitment principle. And this is the one that turns good interviews into actual offers. It's based on a well-documented psychological pattern. Once people verbally commit to something, even something small, their brain works hard to stay consistent with that statement. You can use this ethically in any interview. Here's how. Throughout the conversation, the hiring manager is forming opinions but rarely voicing them. So most candidates walk out hoping it went well, replaying every answer in their head, waiting for an email that may or may not come. That's not a strategy. That's torture. Instead, you guide the interviewer toward a small verbal commitment before you leave the room. The cleanest way to do this is what I call the closing lock. At the very end of the interview, you secure 3 things: the next step, the exact timeline, and what you should do if that timeline slips. It sounds something like this. You thank them for their time, mention you genuinely enjoyed the conversation, and then ask them to walk you through what happens next and when you should expect to hear back. Once they give you a date, you follow up with one more line. Something like, "If I haven't heard anything by that point, would it be all right to send a quick follow-up note?" That's it. 2 clean questions, and they accomplish 3 powerful things. You walk out with complete clarity. You make them mentally commit to a process. And you remove the awkwardness of chasing later because you already have permission. This one tiny habit will save you from weeks of silence and second guessing. So those are the 6 principles that quietly shape almost every hiring decision, whether the interviewer notices or not. Cognitive ease, which is about being easy to deal with. The halo effect, where one strong first impression colors everything that follows. Likability, the unconscious bias that pulls every interviewer toward people they actually want to work with. Authority bias, where perceived expertise opens doors that credentials alone cannot. Confirmation bias, which is why first impressions almost always become final impressions. And the commitment principle, where you take control of what happens after the interview ends. None of these replace doing the actual work. You still need real skills, real experience, and the ability to deliver once you're in the seat. But once you understand that hiring is psychology first and qualifications second, you stop competing on the same playing field as everyone else. You stop hoping somebody notices you. You start designing the entire experience the interviewer has with you, from the first scroll through your profile to the last handshake at the door. If this was useful, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you in the next video.